Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. Since verse 15, we've been looking at God's pronouncement of curses and punishments upon the serpent, upon the woman, upon the earth, upon the man. And now we're going to begin the wrap up to chapter 3 with what Adam does next. Ke ekalesen Adam, ta anima tes gunaikos autou zoe. Hati, haute meter, panton ton zonton. Well, we see that Adam here is the subject, and the verb here is ekalesen from kaleo. This is a third singular aorist active indicative. So he calls, and he calls the name, to anima there, tes gunaikos, that is of the woman, but it's got the possessive personal pronoun there, so it's his wife. We would change gunaikos there to wife. And so what does he call her name? Zoe. Zoe, of course, means life. And that very nicely reflects the underlying Hebrew, which is chava. That also means life. And so he names her Life, which is a beautiful name. And of course, that's where we get the English name Zoe. Now, why does he call her Life? Hati, because or for. Then we have haute meter. Now, you'll notice with the rough breathing, this is the demonstrative pronoun here. This is from hutas, but it's in the feminine form. There also is no explicit verb like an estin, so we have to supply that. So we have to fudge in there an is. For this one, or she, you could do it she, but it's referring back to the gunaikos here. For she is mother, meter, and she's mother of panton, of all, tone, zone tone. And this is from zao. So you notice the connection here. This is the verb form of life. And with that ending, this is a genitive plural masculine present active participle. So she is mother of all of those who are living or something like that. That's why he calls her Zoe. He calls her life. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to see that Adam knew Ewan or Yuan here, Tein Gunaika Autou. So we know that her name is actually Eve. That's Yuan there is the Greek form that I think goes back to chava. It's an attempt to render the chava, yuan or ewan or something along those lines. It's not the easiest thing to pronounce. And so later on in Genesis, after this one particular verse, her name is not actually repeated as Zoe over and over again. The typical transliteration, if you will, is from the Hebrew of chava, and that becomes the one that is used in the New Testament. So just two examples here in 2 Corinthians 11:3. I'm afraid that just as the serpent deceived Eve, that's where we get Eve from. Notice that that is picking up on the Septuagint form in Genesis 4, which in turn is from the Hebrew. And then same thing in 1 Timothy 2:13. Adam was formed first, which we saw in Genesis 2, then Eve, or Hewa there. And so it could be rough breed, depending on who you ask. And so the New Testament is going to pick up more on that, more Semitic form of her name, because Zoe here is almost symbolic. It's not actually her name, but he's describing her as the giver of life to the rest of humanity. So kind of an interesting little historical situation with respect to the name here of Eve or life. So that's Genesis 3:20.